Oh, what's that? You trying to be a full stack developer? You trying to be over here a full stack developer using Swift at that? Oh, I got what you need. What's up, guys? It's your boy Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be going over handling requests using the Vapor framework. We're going to be going over how to handle both GET and post requests, show you how to break down and use the request that's coming in, parse out the data that you're trying to work with, and then spit something back out so that you can start making some APIs up in here. Right? Right. All right, let's get into it. So, as always, if you want the starter project and the finished project, the link will be in the description. Just make sure that you follow it. You enroll into the YouTube course, and it's for free, and you can download the course file or the project file. So let's get into it right here. As you can see, we just have your basic API template for Vapor. There's nothing in it. I just removed all the default routes, and now we just have our very clean routes Swift file like so. Yeah. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually create a get route. So it's going to be a get route, and what we're going to be working with are going to be users. We're going to just pretend like we're creating users, or we're trying to get back some users, right? And then have that be returned to us through the API. After we go through that process, what we're going to do is we're going to handle post requests. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to send up a user, and we're going to spit some things out. Once again, I'm going to show you how some of the different ways to handle requests in Vapor. So let's get into it. The first thing that we want to do is we want to do get, and this is a function, and you just pass in a string, whatever you want the route to be called. So it's going to be like www.kiloloco.com, and then this is the part where the route comes in. It'd be slash home, right? Or slash blog or something like that. For the API, what we're going to want to do is we're going to say slash users, right? So get users, makes sense. And then with this function, we have a closure. Now the closure is the request that's coming in, and we're gonna give it the word the key name as request, and that's going to be in our, just like our normal closure. You guys should be pretty familiar with that. So we're just calling it request. We could call it poop if you want, call it whatever you want, and it's going to be moving forward just like any other closure. We're actually not going to be using it, so I'm going to leave it as poop, because who doesn't like some poop? All right. Lastly, all of these return, they have to return with something that's called ResponseRepresentable. And what that means is essentially it has to be in some type of format that can be sent back to a client that would like in a normal state. Like you can't just send back a regular object, right? You can't just send that back because the client may not know how to handle that. So you need to send back what's called response representable. So that could be like strings or JSON or things like that. And then if you need to do any modifications to that, then you kind of have to dig deep and figure out how you're going to do it. But for the most part, all you really need to know is that a string for right now is response representable. So you could return a string. So we could just say some users. And you should have seen this in the last video where I went over how to set up in Vapor. But yeah. All right, so we're just gonna create this, and I'm gonna be running everything in the terminal, guys, because hey, it's not only us Xcode people that are doing it. It's people that are coming from different platforms. So we're doing it in the terminal. So all we're gonna do is we're currently in our project folder, and we're gonna say Vapor build. That's going to go through, make sure that there's no errors in the project, that it can actually build and run. This would essentially be the same thing as pressing Command B on Xcode, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to actually run the project. So we're going to say Vapor run, and that's going to be essentially the same thing as pressing the play button in Xcode. And once it fires up, once it does all the things that it needs to do, finish building, compiling, all that stuff, as you can see, everything's gonna pop up just like we normally would get in our Xcode. So that's all good. So now what we want to do is we're going to actually use the rested app. I'll leave a link in the description for where you can download it. It's for free. And make sure that we're on port 8080 because that's what, oh, you guys might not even be able to see that. It's so small. Anyway, we're going to be on port 8080 because that's what Vapor defaults to, as you can see right there. And we're just going to say /users, right? And make sure that it is a GET request because that's what we're working with. So we're going to send that over, and we're getting right here some users. So it is working, and as you can see, it's logging which requests are coming in. So that's good. So we're just going to press command period, and that's going to kill our project. It's going to essentially be the same thing as pressing stop. So now we have the users, right? Now, what we would probably want to do is we would want to get back a list of users. So let's go ahead and go over to our models folder right here. We're going to create a new file like so. It's just going to be your normal Swift file like so. And we're going to call it user. And for right now, we're just going to be working with a struct. In Vapor, you're mainly going to be working with classes, but for right now, for today's tutorial, we're just going to be working with a struct. And I'm going to cover in other videos. Don't worry. A lot of Vapor stuff's coming down the line. Don't worry. I got you. All right. So the only property that we're going to have in here is going to be called name. It's going to be a string. Come on, guys. This is so basic. You already know what it is. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to just create some dummy data. I'm going to make my family, and I'm going to put my family's names in here. We're going to have a list of users. Alright guys, so we have a list of users in here. We have 4 users, right? And you know, they're each user objects, and they obviously have a property called name. So and before you continue, if you're not getting the highlighting, just make sure that you do Vapor Xcode, and that will update your Vapor project to make sure that the new file, the user object or the user file, is actually included so that it can read it and give you that syntax highlighting. All right, moving forward. So like I said before, you can use pretty much most primitive. I think most primitives are ResponseRepresentable, but yeah, you can. What we're going to do is we're just going to return one of these names. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you that I've made a user, right? And all I want to do is just return that user's name. So I'm going to say Kyle.name, right? And that, pretty straightforward. There's no reason that it shouldn't work. We're going to just do our Vapor build, our Vapor run. All right, and then we're going to go to rested, and we're just going to go get, and as you can see, Kyle. No big deal. Pretty straightforward. Hey, name is a string property. Why wouldn't it work, right? So as you can see, we can just create objects just like normal Swift as you would expect. So now what we would probably want to do in a get is probably list off all of these user objects. And the way that we can do that is if we actually create a JSON object. Now, there is such thing as a JSON object with Vapor, and what you have to do is just mark it as a variable, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually be changing and modifying the JSON object. So we're going to say var, and we're just going to say lowercase JSON, and you can call it whatever you want once again, and we're going to initialize it just like that. No arguments or nothing like that. And we're just going to say JSON. We're going to say try, because everything throws in Vapor, and the reason that it throws is because you don't want something to not work and then it crashes your server app, essentially bringing down the entire system, and none of your users essentially get to use it. So that's why everything throws, and it's a really smart architecture if you think about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our JSON object, and all we're going to say is say set, and we're going to say set. Let's just say and we can call it whatever we want. We're going to just say name. That's what we want the key of the dictionary of the JSON to come back as, right? So we're going to say set name, and for the value that we want for name is going to be Kyle.name. Or let's do a different one, right? Let's do Adri.name, right? So now instead of returning back a singular like a one-liner specifying this, what we're going to do is we're going to actually return the JSON that we've already made right here. Now let's go ahead and build and run that. So we're going to do command period to end it, Command K to clear everything out. And then we're just gonna build, Vapor build. All right, no errors, so Vapor run. All right, so everything looks like it's working so far. We're gonna do get users once again, /users, port 8080, make sure that get is marked properly. And we get that, we get our JSON back, and as you can see, it makes it very easy to read, just like a dictionary, just like regular JSON. Name is Adri. Now, and we're gonna get, don't worry, we're gonna get into the handling requests. I'm just showing you kind of how the JSON object works. Now, to go a little bit further, what we could do is instead of saying, name, and we're just gonna return one thing, what we could do is we could say users. And instead of just one user and its property, we could put an array in here as well. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so as you can see, this is a way that you actually show an array, because what's going to happen is it's going to create that JSON or that dictionary, and it's going to have the key users, and then it's going to list out an array of each of these names. So let's go ahead and build and run that. All right, everything ran perfectly fine. We're going back over to rest it, and now when we do get, as you can see, it's giving us a list of all those names, which is pretty cool. The very last thing that I want to show you is that you can actually return a dictionary as well for each of these. So let's go ahead and this is how you would kind of structure your data if you wanted to return a dictionary. So or return some values back as nested JSON essentially. All right, so as you can see, I changed everything to I changed it to a dictionary instead, and I just kind of gave everybody their roles. Now, obviously, your object wouldn't look exactly like this. It would probably have keys that are a little bit more dynamic, but I hope this kind of, gets the point across that, what we're gonna see is we're gonna see users and then nested data. So let's take a look at that right now. All right, so here we go. Everything's running, and now if we go back over to our rested and we press send, as you can see, we get back our users, nested data. Key for dad is Kyle, little brother is Xavier, mom Adri, big brother Andy. So that's kind of how you return JSON. Now you're probably wondering, well, Kyle, this is supposed to be handling requests, not making JSON. Well, it's kind of important that you understand how this works before we move on. And the way that we're really going to be handling requests is in the post request, because for the most part, get request is kind of just spitting back something. It depends on what your logic is. So let's get into the post request where you guys came here to figure out how do you handle requests in Vapor. Come on, Kyle. Come on, let's do it. So the only thing that's really different is that instead of saying get, we're just going to say post. And we're still working with users, so I'm going to say users right here. Now notice that they can have the same the same route name as long as they have different HTTP methods. So this is completely fine. There's no problem with it. And if I wanted to make it different, I could make a different user. I can make it, whatever I want. But obviously, working with users, this is kind of what makes sense right now. Now we're actually going to be working with the request in this one, right? Over here, I had it as poop. We never used it. It could have been an underscore. That's probably what you're going to have in most of your routes that don't use the request. Over here, we're actually going to use the request. For right now, I'm just going to return an empty string just so that Xcode stops tripping out on us. We don't like them red lines. All right. So the first way that I'm going to go over how to handle a request is if it's JSON, because it actually depends on what the request is being sent as. If it's being sent as JSON, you can handle it a certain way. If it's being sent as like form data, you can handle it a different way. It's very important that you kind of handle it, or that you're sending up your requests in the particular format that your API is expecting to handle it. So so far we've been working with JSON, so let's keep moving forward with JSON. So all we got to do is we're going to say guard let, and we're going to say JSON is equal to our request, right? The request that's being passed in, and the request has a property called JSON on it, which is optional, which is why we're doing it you know, in a guardlet. And once again, remember that everything throws. So instead of else return, we're going to just say throw, because we don't want our API to just hang, right? We don't want our client to just be waiting. Hey, I'm waiting for that response to come back, but nothing ever happens because you did return, right? So we're going to actually throw an error. If there's a problem with the JSON, it needs to throw it right away. We don't want to be sitting there waiting. So we're going to just say abort.bad request, and this is just your default 404 error. Page not found, something went wrong, blah, 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 blah. All right, so now that we have our JSON, as before, we did the set, right? So what's the opposite of set? Well, get. Come on, go. Come on. Don't be a stupid guy, okay? All right, well, we're going to do a get on the JSON that we're actually pulling out right here. So and what we're going to try to do is we're going to post a user, right? So the request that we're going to probably send up is going to have a user object, and that user is probably going to have a name. So let's get the name value. So we'll say let name value equals and make sure let me do it this way. Actually, we're going to say try JSON dot get and then the name. So once again, everything throws. Get the name. It's expecting, this is saying get whatever parameter that you're putting in your request. That's what it's expecting. So it's looking for that specific thing. If I misspell name, and I'll show you that in a bit, then it's going to be looking for name. And if it says like nam or something, it's just not going to work. All right. Lastly, you actually have to specify the return type, because right here with implicit type, I forgot what it's called, but implicitly stating whatever the type is, it doesn't work on this, because the name, it doesn't know what name is. It could be an integer, it could be a boolean, it could be a date, it could be any of those primitives. So we have to say that it's going to be a string that we're going to be sending up to the server. So we're expecting a string to come back. And then if not, then it's going to try, it's going to fail, and it's going to throw that abort, or it's going to tell you what the reason is. All right, so now that we have the name value, what we can do is we can obviously make our user object. So we'll say it's a dynamic user now. Damn, Kyle, you can't spell it. Dynamic. Dynamic user is equal to user, initialized with that name though. Dynamic or name value. And all we're gonna do is just return essentially what was being passed up. But I want to show you that I can create an object, and then with that object, you know, return one of its properties. So dynamic user dot name. So it's going to go in and it's going to come out, but hey, this is a good way. I feel that this is a good way to kind of show you guys. So what we're going to do, once again, end this. I keep forgetting to end it. So build and run, guys. All right, so everything has built and it has ran, and we are just gonna go back over to our users. Now, remember, we're not doing get anymore, we're doing post. So we have to change the HTTP method to post. All right, pretty straightforward. Now in Rested, we have form encoded and JSON encoded. Right now we're working with JSON. Remember, we're expecting JSON, and I'm gonna get into, you know, form encoded right now, but JSON first. All right, and then once again, I said, we're expecting the name parameter to come across. So yeah, let's do that. So we're gonna pass in Xavier, right? So now, once again, port 8080, route is users, post HTTP method, name, make sure we're expecting the right parameters, and then we're giving it a value, JSON encoded as well. So send that request. We should get a 200, and we should get the name back. Xavier came back in the response. Everything worked perfectly fine. So once again, going through this, it was JSON that we were being sent. We were able to get the name value out, create a user with it, and then pass whatever that dynamic user's name is as a response. Now, as I said earlier, if you spell that parameter wrong, nam, and you send it up, bam, 500 error. Not good. Very, very not good. right? So you're spelling a parameter wrong, which is a serious problem, especially if like if it's like in production. You don't want that to happen. Like there's no reason why you should be spelling a parameter wrong, if especially if you're the one writing the API and doing the iOS side. Come on, guys. But yeah, so it's checking for that. If you put in the wrong value for strings, most of the time it can convert whatever is coming in into a string, but converting like a string into a number, that's just not going to work. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Obviously pass the proper data type that you're expecting. So the other thing that I want to show you is that it does, like I said, it does depend on what type of encoding that you're sending up. So if we did form encoded, if you notice right here, it's different. So name is equal to kilo as opposed to having it in JSON format. So that's very important that you keep that in mind. So if we send that up, what we're going to do is we're going to get a 400 error bad request because you're saying right here on line 24 that, hey, we're expecting it to be JSON that's being sent up, which is not, it's form encoded data. And if not, then we're saying abort bad request. So how do we handle that? What if we do want to pass up a form because we're working on a website, or for whatever reason we're just like we need to just do a form request from our client side? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to do something very similar, except and it's actually more dynamic than just using JSON alone, but it requires some like loosely typed stuff. So what we're gonna do, and I shouldn't say loosely typed, that was the wrong name. Just watch. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say guard let, and we're just gonna go straight for the name value from here. Name value is equal to our request dot, and you're gonna say data this time. Now data essentially it's an object called content, and this kind of works like a dictionary. So what you want to do is you want to put in a value right here in your data, and you're gonna say data, and we're expecting the name as the property, right? Or as the key that we're gonna be parsing from. And all this is optional right here. And then we're gonna specify what type of value it is. So remember, you have to send a primitive, so you can work with an int, you can work with a bool, you can work with a double, and obviously you can work with a string. So just keep that in mind. And then if we're not able to get that name just like before, then we're just gonna throw an abort bad request. Right, so pretty much the same thing as before, except now we're just using a different property called data, and then we're saying dot string. So we're explicitly stating what type it is going to be when we set the name value right here. So let's go ahead and try that. All right, so everything's running, and if we go ahead and we do our form encoded as before, we had the 400 error. Now if we do the send request, you can see we're getting back the name, and we're getting back 200. Okay, so everything's working perfectly, and that's awesome. So that's how you handle form encoded. But the awesome thing about data is that you can actually handle JSON encoded too. So if we change it over to JSON encoded and we say send, we get back a 200 as well. So working with data can be very, very helpful, and there are reasons why you would want to work with JSON, and we're going to cover that down the road in other videos. But just so you know, starting out working with the data directly is very, very useful when you're making APIs in this type of format where everything's kind of laid out right here in the routes. All the logic is laid out in the routes. When we go into controllers, I'll show you why working with JSON directly is a little bit more beneficial. One other thing that I want to show you is the power of working with this data object, because it really gives you a lot of really cool functionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new request, but this time instead of using the default JSON encoding, I'm going to go down here and create a custom HTTP body. Now I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. I'm going to type it out, and then you guys can look it over with me, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. All right, so now as you can see, we have a little bit more of a complex user object being sent up. This is essentially what would be sent as the request. And also, when you do something that's like a custom HTTP body in RESTed, what you actually have to do is you have to go up to the header values and you have to specify what the content type is before you can send it up, because the API kind of needs to know what it's working with before it can parse it. Even if it is expecting JSON and it's in JSON format, you still need to send up the content type so the API knows how to handle it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set it to application JSON. Now, as you can see, the name is no longer selected right here. So if we send up this request, since we still have the name, we should be able to pass in Kilo Loco and get a 200 back. And we do, as expected. Now, let me show you something that's pretty cool on how powerful the data object can actually be. So what we're going to try to do is first we want to just get the pets, right? Let's say, because right here we have in our object we have a user object that's probably being sent up, and the user has a name and the user has pets, right? So right, for the first part that we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get back just the pets. So the way that we would do that in Vapor is we would once again do guard let, and we'll just say pets is equal to request.data, all the same stuff, right? And now instead of the name key, we're looking for the pets key, right? As expected. We're gonna just say else throw abort dot bad request, right? So now what we have is pets, but we no longer have the name value. So what we need to do is we need to comment out the dynamic user, and let me just put that up here with the rest of the stuff, like so. Now what this is actually going to return is it's called a node. Now I'm not going to go into too much right now, but what a node essentially is a way for loosely typed objects to be kind of converted into strictly typed or strongly typed objects from Swift. So a lot of stuff on the web is like stringy type stuff, and a node kind of lets you convert that into something that's readable, something that's convertible into like a strictly typed Swift object. So I'll go over that in the future, but all you really need to know is that it creates a node. And the awesome thing about having a node is that you can create a JSON object from a node. So what we can do is we can say let JSON equals JSON, and then it has an argument that it can be created with called node. So we'll say node, and then we'll just pass in our pets, right? So now we can just return our JSON, just like up here in our get. So let's go ahead and do a Vapor run. And what I had actually meant to say was Vapor build, Vapor run, right? And then we go over here, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna send our request, right? Left it all the same. And we're going to send request, and as you can see, now it's returning an array. It's returning our pets, the value for our pets, which was the array right here, right? So that's pretty cool. Whatever, Kyle, I don't know why the hell you showed us that. I don't really care about that. Well, let's take it one step further, because now what I could do is I could say, hey, I want the second pet, or let's do the first pet, because 0 indexing, right, first, or if we wanted the second one, it would be 1, right, 0 indexing. But yeah, so let's say I wanted the first pet. I'm gonna build and run that, and then we're gonna go back over to our request. And now that we're looking for the first one, when we do send, bam, 200 came back, and we get the actual object right there, that single object. Isn't that's pretty cool if you ask me. I mean, it's kind of stupid, you know, only a nerd would get excited about something stupid like that, but hey, whatever, man. Now, since it's a dictionary right there, since the object that's coming back is a dictionary, what we can do is we can go one level deeper. What? And we just specify the type, because that's what we have in there. And now we have, instead of pets, we're gonna just have that one pet, or we're gonna say pet type, right? And I mean, I could have left it the same, but whatever. You know your boy Kyle got stupid. But yeah, so now we're just gonna build and run that. Alrighty, and let's run this bad boy. And what we do, oh, bam, dog. First one. Now, that was kind of a stupid thing to get excited about, but I was pretty excited when I learned about that. So it makes it very, very interessante. Right? So I liked it. You can really dig down deep with this data object, and that is how you pretty much handle requests. You're going to pretty much be working with data. You're going to, either be working with the node, or you're going to specify what it is directly by saying like .string or dot whatever. And then, yeah, that's how you pretty much handle requests. You got your get, you got your post. You could do the same thing for update, patch, delete, all that other stuff. You could put all your functionality in there. And really, there's really no difference. Like if we wanted to do the delete, we would just say the same old thing. We'd say users, and then we once again we have our request, and then you can do in, and it just, you can do all that stuff. So that's how you handle requests, guys. It's missing the return type. So that's pretty much how you handle requests in Vapor, guys. I hope that you found this video useful. I hope that it's going to get you to that next level to start, making your way into back-end development. And once you have this down, you can really start playing with Vapor and figuring some of these API things out, which I think is really cool. So if you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, or if you want to recommend any videos for me to follow up on in the future, then make sure you drop a comment below, and I'll definitely check that out. If you're interested in talking to me about any bugs, or like any bugs in your code, or you just want to talk and have a conversation, hit me up on Twitter. That's the best place to do it. And if you're interested in my day-to-day life, I post pictures sometimes on Instagram. You can check that out. Lastly, if you want the finished project, all the code and everything, make sure that you sign up on the kiloloco.com YouTube course, which is completely free. And once you sign up, you'll have access to the starter project and the finished project for this. So once again, thank you guys for your time, and make sure that you guys are still coding passionately all up in that back end, all up in it.